Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the summary for the day of 1221 for the 28th of June. I didn't do a frontline changes report because there's only two frontline changes, both significant but no, it's not that much. So I think that it's more efficient, I guess, to do the SITREP first and then combine the rest on the 2-day frontline changes report. So anyway, happy birthday to you with your birthday today and happy Sunday. And we're going to jump straight to Kherson. In the Kherson front, at the Kherson front, and the Kherson front, oh my god, it's so laggy. Give me a second, let me close shit. A second. So yeah, I closed some of my browser tabs to make things faster. So Russian forces shelled at Kozatske. This place is called Novotyakhinka. We have never seen Novotyakhinka mentioned in the past 2 years. And DYLIIVKA. The Ukrainians still mention some fighting reported in the Dnieper direction. Whatever that is, no, because Dnieper direction is very big. So anyway, that's all from the Kherson front. We go on to the Zaporizhzhia front. At the Zaporizhzhia front, this is Zaporizhzhia. At the Zaporizhzhia front, we have fighting reported at the Kupiansk sector. Fighting is still being mentioned at Kupiansk. Some fighting in this sector here as the Russian forces probably is trying to resecure the southern half of Kupiansk. Whether they will go up north remains to be seen, because they did explore going up and then they got kicked back and then Ukrainians have retaken the position. That was some time ago, I think a year ago by now, so a long time ago. So and then we have fighting reported over in the Huyaipole sector. So this Huyaipole. And over this region here, wow, okay, so Huyaipole is here. Russian forces attack Pokrovsk as well as Melanivka. So this operation is something that I've said that is a highlight, is something to take note of, because this is a bit of unusual. And but so far, no much updates regarding this fighting in this sector here. We go on to the Koma front. This is Koma, which is arguably captured by the Russian forces. In this sector, in the south, in the southern flank, we have fighting reported at Shevchenko, towards Komishuvakha, Novosilka, Versale, and Dnipro-Enechaya. So, Dnipro-Enechaya is super weird. I don't think this is a thing. The Ukrainians mentioned this. But otherwise, the rest looks pretty routine. Nothing particularly special about this. Over in the Koma sector, at the Koma front, the entire front line had went rather quiet. You can see there's basically no much reports. Fighting is reported over at Oleksievka, Yalta, and Zaporizhzhia. So the Russian forces have captured Zirka. Geolocation confirms the Russians' capture in this region here. The Russian Defense Ministry has also announced the capture of Chervonaya Zirka. So basically it's just Zirka in Ukrainian. So basically they have captured this area here. To geolocation make it very, very confirmed. And I did mention, due to the geography in this sector here, there's not much crossing around the Mokriali River around here. It is pretty expected that this village is going to fall very, very quickly. So that is a confirmed capture. We move on to the Pokrovsk front. In the southern flank of the Pokrovsk front, a little bit more activities being reported here, with fighting reported in Borovka, Kotlyarivka, and Horikove. So that's about it. The phase still remains largely the same, with this very big leaps here. I don't need to look so witchy, but yeah, this is basically the more or less the same thing. Not much progress. Ukraine seems to have held the line pretty well in this area here, but important to note is this impossible salient that is currently here, and this is unlikely to be able to be sustained. The Russians most likely will capture it pretty soon. Not to mention, of course, this this very ugly one over here. This is most likely also pretty impossible now. Moving into the Pokrovsk front, so at the Pokrovsk sector, so there is fighting reported at Borovka, as mentioned just now. Fighting is reported over at Udashne as well as towards Pokrovsk. Some of the other reports in the yesterday's SITREP didn't really seems to come out anymore. So yeah, pretty meh in this region here. Over in the Minograd sector, at the Minograd sector, we have, sorry for the slow loading, just bear with it. Yeah, this is, yeah. Let me see, can I just turn off this? Yeah, I wonder if that speeds things up. I'm not sure. Come on, load. Okay, so anyway, fighting is reported at Melanivka, Merne, Novoekonomichne, Lyubivka, Promin, towards Minograd, as well as Lysivka. So this is pretty much more or less the same thing as I mentioned before. Static line. This is the main push. So this area here is the main push on the eastern flank of Minograd. But generally, yeah, not much progress. The Ukrainians are doing pretty well defending this area. Although I have to note there is yet another, impossible salient here, which, yeah, should be chopped off, most likely. Move on eventually, but not yet. Over in this Potovka sector, Potovka is here. Fighting is reported at Yablonivka, Popivya, Khotiv, and shelling is reported at Mayak. That's all pretty. Yeah, there's a few actions, I mean, quite predictable, but it's very, based on the reports, it feels very low intensity. But let's see. Moving on to the Toretsk front. At the Toretsk front, we have fighting reported at Kodyomivka, Bilahora, DYLIIVKA. So there's update. The Russian forces has captured this DYLIIVKA, which means both DYLIIVKAs has been captured by the Russian forces. Fighting is reported at Ivanopilia, Plishievka, Toretsk is mentioned, and Leonidivka. So this is largely the situation in this region here. So let's zoom in on DYLIIVKA. So over at DYLIIVKA, so the Russian forces has been geolocated, raising the flag at the very end of the street, in the northern street. So this confirms the full capture of DYLIIVKA. And this marks both DYLIIVKA captured in the Toretsk sector. Another disappointing turn of event for the Ukrainians. And if you look at the situation, you have like two salients here. This one, there's another one. And yeah, so these two can't possibly survive very soon. So the Russians most likely will straighten the front line. That's probably the plan as they bring the fight to Bilahora. And soon, fighting at Alexandro Shutine will become like a real concern. So this is going to be bad. And if the fighting start to move in this way and they start to push in, then they're going to achieve what I think is the objective, which is to close down on Konstantinivka. They are not going to invade into Konstantinivka. That's what I think. Because if they would, they would have already entered Pokrovsk or Minograd. But the thing is, they don't. So Konstantinivka is a much bigger city. This is a very big city. This is actually bigger than Bakhmut. So I don't think they'll go for that. As you can see, Pokrovsk and Minograd both is smaller than Konstantinivka. So I don't think the Russians are going to go for it. I think the aim is just, as per if you have never heard before, is to encircle it and put a strangle on it, and then basically threaten to cut off the retreat route, which is basically up here in over at Oleksievo-Druzhivka. I think the Russians will go for this. Then they just cut off the road. So this is the more likely operation. So the aim is just to encircle it, not to storm it. Storming it is going to be very costly. Like the capture of Bakhmut, come at great cost because of the way how Wagner, private military contractors use their troops, which is super wasteful and it's super old school. It's very World War II-ish way of fighting, which is not the right way to fight. So this is no wonder the Russian Defense Ministry basically broke ties with the Wagner group, because they have been very wasteful, and they are basically playing into the American traps, or the Western alliance trap, because the Western world wants to drain an attrition of the Russians. And if the entire Ukraine war is fought the way how the Wagner private military contractor wants to fight, the Russians is going to lose the entire army. before they even conquer the whole of Ukraine. So that is not the right way to fight the war. Anyway, at Chasivia, fighting is being reported around here. Not much news up to that. You can see, the people who are very bullish about Chasivia. So now you see, I'm right, I'm correct, right? Chasivia is just that terrible place to fight in. And until now, the Russians still have not secured Chasivia. So yeah, I told you so. I told you so. So anyway, press the like button, subscribe as usual, and just the Ukraine war. I mean, it affects everybody. It seems everybody's viewership has dropped for the Ukraine war reporting, but for DPA's case, it's getting a bit rather unprofitable. It's definitely below. If luckily is that I don't depend on DPA exclusively for my to pay my bills and food, but it's below earning wage. Let's say if purely on DPA alone. So yeah, if you can support DPA through the Patreon, that will create a buffer. If not, I have to do something. I have to make some big changes, or and then I'm going to be focused on other businesses because the DPA will no longer be viable as a business soon. Yeah. Thank you, YouTube, for changing the algo and killing the channel. But anyway, so fighting is reported at Vymka at the Siversk front as well as Zvanivka. Not much is known about this sector here. Shelling is reported at Riznikivka, which is part of the logistic route into Siversk, where they resupplied the front line. So that is that Rizivka has been the target for a lot of the Russian shelling. So far, that's about it in the south. In the northern flank of Siversk, I can't even zoom in, man. Fighting is reported at Chervonaya, Serbianka, Vovchansk, as well as Siversk. So the Russians are doing this two-pronged attack in the Siversk front. Of course, not if you count in the south, then it's going to be three-pronged. So let's see if it's like this. You can see that the Russians are attacking in a three-pronged attack. So this is currently, the operation here. They're attacking in all sides, but yeah, there's not much dynamism. That we don't see a lot of frontline changes lately. The last one was, all these areas here, and further back in the past, there's going to be a bit of the Kupiansk, but not much dynamic changes in this sector. So we have to wait for more intel. Over in the Lyman front, this is Lyman, Krasny Lyman. Fighting is reported at Toretsk, DYLIIVKA, and Zelina Dolina. So the main push is actually towards Chandriholove. This is the main push. This area here seems to be a trap right now. It's just to draw Ukrainian forces into this sector, whilst the main push is elsewhere. Because the Ukrainians would would try their best to defend and prevent Lyman from falling. It's a reputation issue. It's an ego issue. PR wise, Lyman falling is bad. So all these other smaller towns, it's if they lose, it doesn't feel as bad. The media will not talk about it. So that's one thing. Over in the Oskil front, we have, let me see. Yeah, we have fighting reported at Kharkivka, Okievka, Rikodub, as well as Karpivka. So mainly that's all. Looks like a two-prong, but from this area here, but very quiet, doesn't look like much. Over in the Borova front, this is Borova. At the Borova front, we have fighting reported at Sankove, Novokulyakivka, Zeleny High, Nadia, and Novoyehorivka. So a bit of a more activities. Like this is the northern flank, the eastern flank, and then you have this in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. Yeah, so three-prong attack against Borova, but we shall see how this goes. These are all targeting Borova, by the way. We move on to the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, this is Kupiansk. At the Kupiansk front, we have fighting reported in the east at Velyka Novosilka. Around Kupiansk, there is fighting reported at Sobolivka, Holubivka, and Kupiansk. So zooming in here, and for those that didn't notice or didn't watch the previous reports, Russians have already announced the capture of Rakivka and Moskovka, which is why the fighting is moving into Zaporizhzhia. But these are all Russian Defense Ministry's claim. We can't tell what the hell is happening. There's fighting report at DYLIIVKA as they continue to go down the Oski River and towards Kupiansk itself. So there's this flanking operation. We cannot confirm if this is real because we cannot confirm the capture of Pokrovsk or Kharkivka. There is just no intel on this. No video, no photos. So we just have to wait because it might be inaccurate. It might be misinformation. It might be just the troops on the ground sending up fake reports just to get bonuses. That is also a possibility. We cannot deny that's a distinct possibility because yeah, there is a lot of bonus when it comes to capturing grounds and settlements. Moving into Voronezh, this is Voronezh. At the Voronezh front, there is two attacks. One is at Troivka, another one is at Kharkivka. I think the reports coming from the Ukrainians, yeah, the Ukrainians reported this. So the Russians still have not secured the Troivka region. So and then the Russians are still trying to push out of Voronezh. So far, yeah, the Ukrainians are spending a lot of resources, holding the front line here. So that's about it. It must be so tough to be the command or the leaders of Ukraine. Like, how do you manage this war? It's just so huge. So anyway, over at Kharkiv front, this is Kharkiv city. At the Kharkiv front, the Russians continue to attack in the Udi direction. There's fighting reported at Khlipoke as well as Vovchansk. So very stretchy. This looks like a stretchy operation. The Ukrainians are stretching across the front line. This around the stretch is around 63 kilometers. So let's see how this goes. So far, this is a diversionary operation. It's a pinning operation. It's to pin Ukrainian forces in place to prevent them from reinforcing other fronts. We move on to the last front line over at the Sumy front. So this is Sumy. Over at the Sumy front, the main operation is around north of Sumy. There is fighting reported towards Zaporizhzhia, and there's fighting reported at DYLIIVKA and Kharkiv. The intensity of the operation here seems to have reduced quite a bit. It looks like most of these parts has already established the buffer zone that the Russians aim to do. So we are pretty much established this front line, this buffer zone quite accurately. The Russians still have to capture Varakine unless they're going to set this up as a Q zone. And the Russians already claimed the capture of Novomykolaiivka. So this as a Q zone is not impossible because Ukrainians are kind of dumb militarily. They just keep sending troops into harm's way to just hold settlements that they actually cannot hold. Like physically, it's just impossible to hold. But because the Russians don't overrun it, they just keep sending soldiers up front to sit in those trenches and to be killed by FPV drones, which is kind of silly. Yeah, but that is the Ukrainian tactic, like AI, like I always say, like AI in the RTS game, real-time strategy game. So there is various geolocation. This is a Humvee that was hit, and then these other twos are airstrikes. These trees are airstrikes. The Russians airstrike the Ukrainians. So mainly that's about it. The Humvee here simply clearly shows the Ukrainians are still trying to operate up to the front as far as possible, which is kind of silly because the Russians already is here. A Humvee going so close to the front line is just sitting duck. So it's going to get destroyed easily. So the Russians attack at DYLIIVKA and Kharkiv. So that's mainly about it. Shelling is reported at Marine. So that's something. But yeah, mainly that's all. It's getting very down. The Sumy offensive is coming close to the end, I guess. It's very similar to our experience, right? If you have followed me during the Kharkiv offensive, where the Russians pushed through to Khlipoke, towards Lipsy, and then to Zaporizhzhia, Borovka, then Vovchansk, Kotori. This offensive, in the end, create this buffer zone, and basically the Russians didn't go further. A lot of other channels, I'm not sure. Actually, I don't watch them. I just see based on comments, like all the headlines. They're very excited, but they think that the Russians are going to go for Kharkiv city, and I did mention that they will never go for it. Right at the right at the outset of the offensive, even before the offensive, I said that there's zero reasons for the Russians to go for Kharkiv city. I was correct. The buffer zone was established, and I did call it out very early. So the Sumy is seemingly the same reason. The main idea is to create a buffer zone protecting Zaporizhzhia and the rest of the region where the Ukrainians have have invaded previously. So this invasion, so this is where the buffer zone is, mainly protecting Zaporizhzhia, as well as there's this area here south of this town of Kharenovo. So basically that is the buffer zone. It doesn't look as the kind of buffer as I expected it. I expect the buffer to be much bigger around here, but the Russians only went like partial. Like there's still a bit more that I thought that they would go for, but they didn't. So anyway, that's mainly about it. So that's it. This is the summary for the day of 1221 for the 28th of June. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.